It started with a knock. Not the kind you expect from a neighbor or a package delivery. No, this knock was different. Slow, deliberate, heavy. 3 distinct thuds, like someone pressing their knuckles into wood with intent. It was just after midnight. I live alone in a log cabin tucked away in the Oregon woods, an hour from the nearest town, 15 minutes from a gas station down an old dirt road, and completely surrounded by pines that tower like sentries. That's why I chose this place. Silence, seclusion, no people. But isolation is a double-edged sword. When something goes wrong, there's no one coming. The first knock came on a Tuesday night. I'd just shut off the TV and was heading to bed when I heard it. 3 slow knocks, loud enough to be unmistakable. I stopped mid-step, heart skipping. It was so out of place, so wrong. I stood there, listening. Then came a voice, muffled through the door, but clear enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "Let me in." It was a child's voice. I rushed to the door, confused and concerned. A kid? Out here? Alone? I looked through the peephole. Nothing. I flipped on the porch light. Still nothing. But as I opened the door cautiously, a cold wind rushed in, and something made me look down. Footprints. Small, barefoot impressions in the wet leaves and dirt, leading up to the door, then away, disappearing into the trees. No child, no adult, just those prints. I shut and locked the door. That night, I barely slept, ears straining for sound, heart thudding at every creak. Morning brought light and a sliver of courage. I followed the prints into the woods, expecting to find something, anything. But after 30 or so feet, they just stopped. No signs of turning, no disturbance in the underbrush. It was as if the child had vanished mid-step. I tried to shake it off. Maybe an animal, maybe a trick of the weather, maybe even a weird dream. I told myself a lot of things. But then came the second night. The knocks came again. 3 slow thuds. This time it was 12:11 a.m. I was already half awake, heart pounding before I even moved. Then the voice, "Let me in." Same as before. Innocent, but wrong. Like it had practiced how a child should sound. Like a recording with something missing beneath the surface. I stood frozen behind the door. Then I spoke. "Who are you?" Silence. A pause, and then, "I'm cold." I called the police. The dispatcher was kind but skeptical. Promised to send someone the next day to check the area. Probably just some kid pulling a prank, they said. But what kind of kid walks barefoot into the woods at midnight, miles from civilization? The third night, there were no knocks. Just scratching. Light at first, almost like leaves rustling. Then clearer, fingernails across wood. Slow and deliberate, right along the doorframe. I turned off all the lights and grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I had. I sat in the dark, heart in my throat. Then the voice returned, closer this time, like it was crouched just on the other side of the door. "I saw you today." I stopped breathing. "You walked right by me. I was in the trees." I had walked the trail near the cabin that morning. Nothing unusual. Quiet. Empty. Or so I thought. Was it watching me then? I didn't reply. Then came a whisper, barely audible. "I'm lonely." I sat in silence until dawn. When the deputy came the next day, I told him everything. I must have sounded crazy, paranoid, sleep-deprived, and I was all 3. Still, he took a look around. He found the prints again. This time, they didn't stop at the door. They circled the house, twice. He didn't say much after that, just told me, "If it happens again, don't engage. Just call us." Could be a kid, could be something else. Something else. That part stuck with me. That evening, I boarded the door shut, hammered planks across it like I was preparing for a siege. I covered the windows with heavy blankets and nailed them into place. I sat with the lights off, phone in hand, knife by my side. Midnight passed. No knock, no voice, just silence. I exhaled, finally, thinking maybe I had overreacted. Then, from the living room window, just above the couch I was crouched behind, I heard a soft breath against the glass. And then words, whispered but clear. I don't need the door anymore. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The window creaked slightly. Then, nothing. I stayed like that until daylight, my muscles aching, sweat soaking through my clothes. That morning, I packed a bag. I was done. I needed out. But the battery in my truck was dead. Brand new battery. Bought it 2 weeks ago. The hood was clawed. 5 long, deep scratches across the metal, like from fingers with nails made of stone. I was trapped. I didn't board anything up that night. I knew it wouldn't help. I turned off all the lights and sat in the closet of my bedroom, phone clutched to my chest, trying not to cry. I texted my brother, told him to come get me first thing in the morning. Then I heard it. A humming. Soft, almost gentle, like a lullaby sung from far away. Familiar but off-key. Then footsteps. Not heavy. Not one person. Several. Outside the windows. Around the walls. Moving slowly. Like they were circling. Then one word. And multiple voices. Too many to count. Whispered together. Let us in. I must have passed out, because the next thing I knew, the sun was coming up. The humming had stopped. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. I opened the closet and stepped into my room. Footprints. Wet. Muddy. Small. All over the floor. Leading from the front door. Through the hallway. And into the guest room. I crept down the hallway, every step aching with fear. The guest room door was open. Empty. No one there. But written on the mirror in smeared mud were the words, "We are inside now." I left the moment my brother arrived. Didn't explain much. He saw the look on my face and the scratches on the truck, and didn't ask questions. We drove straight to his place, and I haven't been back since. That was 3 weeks ago. Every night since, I wake up at 12:08 a.m. sharp. No reason, no alarm, just awake. Sometimes I hear a faint knock at the window. Sometimes I hear a voice. And sometimes I hear the humming again, even though I'm now 100 miles away from that cabin. I don't know what I let into my life. I don't know if it was ever a child. I don't know if it was ever one thing. But I do know this. When something knocks in the dark, don't open the door. Don't speak back. Don't listen too long. Because once it finds your voice, it never leaves you alone again. The soft hum of the city was usually a lullaby to me, a constant, low thrumming beneath the quiet of my 9th floor apartment. After years of the chaotic symphony of roommates, this newfound solitude was a balm. As a remote graphic designer, my days bled into nights, the glow of my monitor often the only light in the room, save for the expansive urban sprawl outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. This was my sanctuary, a tranquil haven where inspiration flowed as freely as the distant city lights. It began subtly, an almost imperceptible ripple in my peace. It was a Tuesday, the digital clock on my monitor a stark 1:43 a.m. I'd just hit save on a particularly demanding client project, the satisfaction a quiet hum in my chest. Leaning back, I stretched, my neck cracking with a satisfying pop, and my gaze drifted, as it often did, toward the immense glass pane that offered a panoramic view of the city. That's when I saw it, a fleeting movement. Not outside in the bustling metropolis, but on the glass itself. A shadow, indistinct and swift, as if something had passed directly over the window. I paused, my mind trying to rationalize. A cloud? A trick of the light? Or simply the fatigue of another long night blurring my vision? I stared, but the glass was clear, the cityscape beyond undisturbed. Shaking my head, I dismissed it as exhaustion and returned to my work, the faint unease quickly fading into the background. But then it happened again. A sudden, dark shape, quicker this time, as if something had brushed against the window's surface. My breath hitched. It was impossible. The narrow ledge outside was barely a foot wide, a precarious perch at best, and there was no balcony. No logical way for anyone or anything substantial to be out there. I clicked off my monitor, plunging the room into near darkness, hoping to eliminate any glare or reflection. Still, nothing. The glass remained a silent, reflective void. Convinced it was my mind playing tricks, I finally shut my laptop and stumbled into bed, the unsettling image lingering at the edges of my awareness. The next night, the subtle unease curdled into outright dread. The time was eerily similar, around 1:40 a.m. I was lost in the intricate details of an illustration, my stylus dancing across the tablet, when a new sound pierced the quiet. A distinct tapping. 3 taps. Slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. The sound was unmistakably coming from the window, mere feet from my desk. Every hair on my body prickled, a primal alarm blaring in my head. With agonizing slowness, I turned my head, my eyes wide and unblinking. Nothing. The glass was an empty canvas. But the tapping came again. This time, closer, as if whatever was making the sound had taken a step forward, directly in front of the pane. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden stillness of the room. I pushed away from my desk, rising slowly, my hand instinctively reaching for my phone. Turning on the camera, I zoomed in, trying to capture any anomaly, any reflection that might betray the unseen presence. The flash momentarily illuminated the darkness, and then I checked the photo. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering to the floor. There it was. Blurry, faint, but undeniably there. A figure on the other side of the glass. Pale skin, long dark hair, a face pressed against the cold surface. My face. And behind me, in the ghostly reflection caught in the photo, I could see my bed. I was lying in it. Sleep was an alien concept that night. I spent the remaining hours huddled on the couch, every light in the apartment blazing, my phone clutched in my hand. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sent jolts of fear through me. I even ventured into the hallway outside my apartment, convinced it was a cruel prank. Despite the undeniable impossibility of anyone accessing my 9th-story window from the outside. There was no fire escape, no adjacent building, just a sheer drop. The image of that distorted reflection, of my own face staring back at me from an impossible vantage point, was seared into my mind. The following morning, sunlight offered a fragile shield against the previous night's terror. I picked up my phone, my hand still shaking, and reviewed the photo again, desperately trying to convince myself it was a glitch, a double exposure, anything but what it appeared to be. But the figure was too clear, too defined to be a mere optical illusion. It was too real. That night, I retreated. The windows became my enemy. I drew all the curtains, turned on every light, and blasted music, a desperate attempt to drown out the silence that had become so menacing. No tapping, no shadows. Gradually, the tension in my shoulders eased, and I began to relax, the exhaustion finally pulling me into a fitful sleep. But peace was fleeting. At 3:17 a.m., I jolted awake in my bed, a sudden, inexplicable awareness that something was wrong. I didn't even remember falling asleep. And standing at the window, perfectly still, was someone. A dark silhouette, its outline illuminated by the faint glow of the city lights bleeding through the edges of the curtains. My body froze, a primal instinct overriding thought. Whoever it was, they weren't moving, just standing, staring. The silence in the room was deafening, amplified by the frantic thump of my heart. I reached for the baseball bat I kept beside my bed, a relic from my days playing intramural sports. My hand trembled as I gripped the cold metal, and with a surge of desperate courage, I flung open the curtains. Nothing. The window was empty. The city lights stretched out, indifferent and vast. The terrifying silhouette had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. I couldn't endure it anymore. The next day, I bought heavy blackout blinds, ensuring not a sliver of light could penetrate my fortress. I installed a motion-activated camera, meticulously positioned to capture every inch of the window. I stopped staying up late, opting for early nights, hoping to avoid the witching hour that had become so fraught with terror. But curiosity, a dangerous and compelling force, gnawed at me. A week later, I caved. I pulled up the camera footage, my stomach churning with a mixture of dread and morbid fascination. And there it was, every night, exactly at 3:17 a.m. The camera showed a figure appearing at the window, not climbing, not walking, not even phasing into view. It simply appeared. For 45 seconds, it stood there, perfectly still, watching. And then, as inexplicably as it arrived, it was gone. I called building security, my voice strained and shaky as I recounted the impossible events. They listened patiently, then reiterated what I already knew. There was absolutely no way for anyone to access the outside of my window. No ladders, no platforms, no fire escapes, nothing. Desperate, I showed the video to a close friend. He watched, his face draining of color, his eyes fixed on the flickering image. When the figure vanished, he looked at me, his voice a hushed whisper. "I'll never forget. That's not someone standing outside your window. That's someone watching from inside, looking out." His words didn't make sense until the dream started, or rather, one repeating dream. Each night, I'd wake up in my bed within the dream, but everything felt wrong. The air was thick, suffocating. My limbs were heavy, unresponsive, as if bound by an invisible force. And someone was in my chair, at my desk, drawing something on my tablet. Each time I struggled, my dream self fighting to see their face, inching closer and closer to the truth. And one night, I did. It was me, but older, paler, with eyes that were not my own, devoid of the familiar spark, replaced by a chilling, knowing emptiness. He turned, slowly, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips. And then he whispered, his voice a dry rustle against the dream's oppressive silence. "You're not supposed to be awake." I moved out 2 weeks later. The apartment, once my sanctuary, had become a prison of terror. I threw out my phone, deleted the footage, anything that could serve as a tangible link to the horror. I told myself it was stress, overwork, the cruel tricks of insomnia. I told everyone I just needed a change of scenery. But I can't forget that final night. As I packed my last box, the blinds, despite being secured, fluttered. a ghostly breath against the quiet. And etched in the condensation on the glass, chillingly clear, were 3 words. See you soon. I don't know what it was. A spirit? A doppelganger? A fractured version of me, bleeding through the veil of reality? All I know is that something was outside that window, or perhaps within it. And sometimes, now, when I pass by buildings at night and I see a light on up high, I glance up, just to check, and sometimes I see it, a figure pressed against the glass, tapping slowly. Tap, 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 looking down, and I wonder who they're watching now. They say kids have wild imaginations, that they make things up when they're scared or confused. I used to believe that, until the night my daughter told me there was a man in the yard. The problem is, we live on the 2nd floor, and we don't have a yard. It's just me and Emma, my 4-year-old daughter. We live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment at the far edge of a quiet little town. You'd probably drive past it without ever noticing. From our window, you can see the communal parking lot and a concrete alleyway, maybe the brick wall of the next building over. Nothing more. Our unit sits on the 2nd story. There's no garden, no patch of grass, not even a tree. Just asphalt and concrete and the occasional passing car. So when Emma first mentioned the man in the yard, I didn't think twice about it. Just more bedtime nonsense. But it didn't stop. That first night, the storm had rolled in heavy. Thunder cracking loud enough to shake the windows, lightning flashing like a strobe. Emma was tucked in, her favorite bear clutched tight. I kissed her goodnight, started pulling her curtain shut, when she said softly, "Don't open it. He doesn't like when I look at him." I paused. Who doesn't like it? She turned toward me slowly and whispered, "The man who stands in the yard. He comes when it rains." Now, at that point, I thought maybe she'd had a dream or seen something online. Kids absorb things fast. I brushed it off, pulled the curtain fully shut, and left a soft night light on. But a part of me didn't sleep well that night. 2:17 a.m. Soft footsteps across the hallway. I sat up, already feeling tense. Then her voice. "Mommy, he's back." Emma was standing in my doorway, hair messy, eyes wide, hugging her bear like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I swallowed hard. "Where is he?" She pointed toward her bedroom window. I got up and went with her. Her little fingers clutched mine tightly. The room felt ice cold when I stepped in. I hesitated, then peeled back the curtain. And that's when I saw him. A man, standing absolutely still near the dumpster at the edge of the parking lot. No umbrella. Drenched, head tilted slightly upward, looking straight at our window. He didn't move, didn't flinch. I stared, frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. My rational mind fought back. Maybe it's a trick of the light. Maybe it's a maintenance guy. Maybe. I blinked. He was gone. No footsteps, no shadow moving away, just empty pavement and the sound of rain. I called the police the next morning. They were polite but unconcerned. Said it was probably a transient seeking shelter. Told me to keep the windows locked. They promised a drive-by patrol that night. I didn't feel better, and it didn't stop. Every night after that, sometime between 2 and 3 a.m., Emma would come wake me up. Not crying, not panicking, just whispering, "He's there again." And every time she was right. Some nights I looked. Some nights I couldn't bring myself to. Once, I made the mistake of looking for too long. He stood closer than ever before. right beneath the window now, his face hidden in shadow. But I could feel him looking up, watching. It started affecting Emma during the day. She became more withdrawn, wouldn't play outside at daycare, started sketching the same figure in her drawings. Tall man, long arms, no face, always surrounded by rain. She barely spoke, but when she did, it chilled me. He's lonely, Mommy. That's why he stands there. He misses his little girl. He remembers me from before. Before? Before what? When I pressed, she just got quiet. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started researching our building, local newspaper archives, online forums, police reports. That's when I found it. In 1995, a woman named Angela Clark lived in our exact apartment. She had a young daughter. They called the police multiple times over the course of 3 months. Same description. A man seen standing outside their window during rainstorms. They eventually moved out. But before they did, the daughter, Emily, disappeared one night during a thunderstorm. No forced entry, no sign of struggle, just an open window and muddy footprints on the carpet. A week later, another storm hit. The lights flickered. 2:03 a.m. Emma screamed. I rushed to her room. The curtain was open. I swear I'd closed it before bed, and she was standing on the windowsill, frozen. Not crying, not blinking, just staring. "Emma!" I shouted, grabbing her down. She didn't resist. She whispered, "He said it's my turn now." My heart pounded so hard I felt lightheaded. I locked every door and window, pulled all the blinds, and stayed up holding her, every light on. At 3:36 a.m., the hallway light flickered. We don't have a hallway light, not in that part of the building. We left the next day. I didn't pack everything, just the essentials. I threw clothes into bags, grabbed Emma, and drove to my sister's house 2 towns over. Didn't tell the landlord. Didn't even check the mailbox. I just had to get out. For the first time in weeks, Emma slept through the night. No rain, no shadows, no whispers. Life started feeling normal again. Emma laughed again. She drew colorful things. Trees, animals, even me. No more dark figures. No more men in the rain. I thought it was over, until last Thursday. She brought home a crayon drawing from preschool. It was of a tall man, standing in the rain. No face, just darkness where his eyes should be. And in the corner, she'd written, "He found me again. I don't care what anyone says anymore. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't just some unwell stranger who happened to like rainstorms. It was something else, something that watches, waits, and never forgets. I've changed numbers, moved states, slept with lights on. But sometimes, when the rain taps against the glass late at night, I think about him, standing out there, smiling, and I wonder, how long until he decides it's time again? How long until another child sees him and believes him?